President Trump's lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, is calling James Comey a, quote, disgraceful liar. He said the fired FBI director, who used to work for Giuliani, should be prosecuted. This echoes earlier statements made by the president. Comey's new memoir, A Higher Loyalty, Truth, Lies, and Leadership, is now a New York Times bestseller. It chronicles his early career, his years in the Justice Department, and his relationship with President Trump. James Comey, good morning. Welcome.
Good morning. Great to be with you.
Your book talks about your early career, and the first time you met Rudy Giuliani, you were very excited to go work for him. You said it fired me up working for him. So this guy who got you fired up is now saying pretty tough things about you.
Yeah, it seems like the love is gone.
Yes.
I enjoyed working for him as a young prosecutor. I found him exciting and brash. I learned through the lens of adulthood that wasn't a great kind of leadership, but it was an exciting place to be a young prosecutor.
But what about his claims that you should be prosecuted, that, you know, he's essentially echoing what the president has said, that you leaked information, that you, I mean, he has a lot of authority with a lot of people.
Yeah, we're lucky to live in a country where facts matter and that people aren't prosecuted by people tweeting about them. And so the facts in this case are just make those accusations ridiculous.
He also called FBI agents who raided Michael Cohen's office. He compared them to stormtroopers, Nazis from Nazi Germany. You sort of deflect when he attacks you. What is your reaction when he's going after FBI agents, calling them stormtroopers?
Yeah, that's unacceptable. When our nation's leaders, the president or his representatives, attack the institutions of justice, the rest of us have to not only pay attention, we have to speak out because we need those institutions. And the notion that the FBI is made up of Nazi stormtroopers is just wrong and dangerous. And so I think all of us have to say that's not normal, that's not okay, and speak back to it.
Isn't this book, James Comey, your way of speaking out and drawing attention to say to people that, listen, it's not normal, what's happening in the White House is not normal, and we've got to figure out a way to stop this and correct it. Isn't that what you're doing?
In part. I mean, I think what I can do is make a small contribution by asking questions about what matters and what unites us, which is our values, and we're losing track of and becoming numb to the erosion of our core values of truth and the rule of law.
No, but you say the president is unethical, untethered to the truth, institutional values. His leadership is transactional, ego-driven, and about personal loyalty. And some people are raising those exact things about you.
People can say whatever they want. What I hope people will do is not get caught down in the back and forth of Twitter personnel and personal conflicts, but ask themselves, what unites us in this country? The truth, the rule of law, equal protection of the laws. And it's not okay for the President of the United States to attack those things and to routinely lie. No matter what your politics, it's just not okay.
Go ahead.
I was just saying, and aside from the President of the United States, you also said that you lost trust and leadership at the DOJ, starting with Jeff Sessions and Rod Rosenstein. I'm curious as to whether any of that trust has come back, given some of their actions as of late. Rod Rosenstein said the DOJ won't be extorted. Jeff Sessions reportedly said that he would resign if Rod Rosenstein was fired. Do you find that reassuring?
I do. I was critical of them when I thought they were acting in a way that was not consistent with the values of the department. I think since then, especially the Deputy Attorney General has acted consistent with those values and protected the rule of law.
Can I pull us away from abstractions for a moment? You talk about values and ethical leadership, but that's what your book is really about. A lot of it's been missed in the cut and thrust. What does this mean day to day if you're a young FBI investigator? How does this trickle down to the day-to-day job you do, the maintenance of those values?
Well, making sure the American people understand the nature of your work as an FBI agent and that you should be trusted is at the core of your effectiveness. When you knock on a door and promise a sexual assault victim you'll protect her identity, it's important that she believes you, or that when a jury hears that you found something in a car, it's important that they believe you so that you can do the good that you do every day for the country. That's why the attacks on the institution are so dangerous, because we all need these institutions.
What about what keeps an FBI agent who's working by themselves, might be encouraged to cut a corner? How do these values help from that end in terms of instilling them with the values that guide their work?
Well, they know two things in the FBI, and they're trained from the very beginning. Values are at the center of the organization, and if there's a deviation from those values, there will be severe accountability. You see that all the time in the Justice Department and the FBI. We hold our people accountable to those values.
Time magazine has a piece entitled "The FBI is in Crisis, and it's worse than you think." Do you think that this public spat with the president and your role at all has contributed to this internal crisis that Time Magazine's talking about?
Sure, in the sense that I had to make decisions over the last year when we were stuck in the middle of these situations, both the Hillary Clinton email investigation and with respect to President Trump, that were incredibly difficult, that there were no good options. And so anytime you're stuck there, the institution and you are going to take a hit.
When you have talked about your own time at the FBI, you said you wish you had maybe pushed back with Attorney General Loretta Lynch. You also said in that meeting with the president, you wish you'd done things differently. Reflecting on those two instances and what you would ask people to do now under President Trump, do you see how people might not be able to stand up and take the kind of action you're kind of calling for in terms of calling out the president?
I do. And it's not easy, especially when you're alone with the president in the Oval Office. But one of the things I hope to do is remind people we have to. Because whatever our vigorous policy disagreements, our values are all we have. And if our leaders and the people they lead don't recognize that and stand up for those values, who are we as a country?
You write in the book that at times you were concerned about your own ego, that maybe you had blinders on and couldn't look at other people's point of view, that you don't like being criticized, nobody does, but that you pay attention to your critics. What have you learned from the criticism you receive? Because you managed to tick off people on both sides, Democrats and Republicans. Wherever you go, people have something negative to say about you. What have you learned from your critics? You have a lot of support too, but what have you learned from your critics?
It's mostly in my family. But
no,
yeah.
your wife is definitely a big supporter. I loved reading about Patrice.
Yeah,
she's a star too, by the way.
She's amazing. But what I've learned is that sometimes the way I see myself is not the way reasonable, thoughtful people see me. And you can't get trapped in that view that everyone will understand what's inside my head and accept my good motivations, accept that I'm acting in the right way. And I blew a number of things that I talk about in the book, and a lot of them were based on perception, where I didn't anticipate how people might hear my words differently than I intended them.
If you were interviewing the president, what would you ask him?
Well, I'd ask him, if I were Bob Mueller, I'd ask him a whole lot of questions, and I would want as much time as I needed to be able to conduct a competent investigation and competent interview.
How much time would that be?
It would all depend upon how straightforward the witness was and whether the witness answered the questions.
Questions like what? Because we know you'd ask a lot of questions. Can we hear your top 2 questions that you want to know? Well,
certainly looking at the question of obstruction of justice, would want to understand what his state of mind was around things like his conversation with me on Valentine's Day. I have one view of that, but I don't know what was in his head, and that's critical to the question of obstruction. So you'd want to know, what were you thinking, and why do you say that, and who did you talk to about that?
Tell me why that helps, because if you were asking me that question, I would say, well, I wasn't trying to obstruct anything.
Yeah.
Rudy Giuliani said you wouldn't tell the president he was in the clear, and that was grounds enough for him to fire you, since he's essentially your boss.
Well, you'd want to ask follow-up questions based on the other investigation that you've done. The reason you interview a subject towards the end of the investigation, as we did with Hillary Clinton, is you've gathered all kinds of facts, documents, other people's recollections that you can use to test what that subject says to you.
One of the things Rudy Giuliani says is you told Hillary Clinton she was in the clear. Why couldn't you have said that publicly about President Trump?
We completed the investigation of Secretary Clinton and announced its completion. There's an ongoing investigation, near as I can tell, and I don't know how the special counsel will approach it, but they're two very different things.
From everything
next week, though, rather, will be a year since the firing. We all remember watching it on TV. It was painful to watch, and it was a painful day for you. And in that past year, you've had time to reflect. What are you thinking now, James Comey, about how you've handled yourself in the last year, what you see for yourself going forward? Where are you now?
I am, looking backwards, proud of the work that the FBI has done. We really did act consistent with our values, have a great sense of pain over a lot that's going on, especially our being stuck in the middle of the election. But I'm at peace with the decisions we made. And I keep saying we because I'm accountable for the decisions, but it was a large group of talented people who made those. And I'm a happy person despite a lot of the rocks thrown. And I'm going to teach starting in the fall, which will be really cool because young people talk about holding you accountable. It'll be stimulating.
James Comey, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Really good to see you. I know we're your last TV interview. I'd like to think you saved the best for last.
Certainly did.
You're welcome, Mr. Comey. Really good to meet you.
Thank you all.
And say hi to your wife.
I will. Thank you.
A Higher Loyalty is on sale now wherever you like to buy your books.